Okay, tonight we are going to make pasta with tomatoes and olives and capers and garlic and onions and basil. So kind of like always, a lot of the ingredients are optional things. So you can use up what you have in your fridge. You can put all the things that I'm going to use tonight, or you can put additional things. Or if you don't like olives, or if you don't like capers or whatever, then you don't have to put them in there. So, and we'll talk about pasta when we get a little bit further along. So I'm going to start with about a half of an onion, small dice. Cut it in half, leave the stem on, peel it off. You know the routine by now. Then we're going to dice it up. And that's going to be the first thing that we're going to start cooking, right? So let's talk a little bit about the order of when you put things in the pan. So generally, cooking is all about timing, and it's entirely about timing. So it's all about making sure that you don't overcook things or undercook things. So that's about timing, and it's making sure that the different ingredients that you are using cook, kind of together and sort of in harmony. So you're putting them in at the right time so they don't get overcooked or undercooked in the things together. And even, I've been saying a lot recently how make sure that things are cut into kind of uniform size so they cook evenly when you're cooking them, right? Okay, so here we have our onions, and I'm going to also chop up a clove of garlic. So a lot of times you start things like sauces with onions, and even though you're putting other things in there, it's very typical and good to start your onions first. And while I'm on it, this piece of garlic has the germ. You see how it's growing in the middle? And it's good to pull that out. The French believe that the little growing germ part of the garlic will give you indigestion. So it's good to pull that out. It's easier if you just cut the whole piece in half. If you cut the clove in half first and pull it out, and then chop it up. But anyway, back to the onions. We start with the onions because you do a couple of things with onions. You sweat them so they become kind of almost translucent, or you brown them, caramelizing them, so you're cooking the sugars in them and caramelizing them. And usually you do either of those things before you add other ingredients. And so tonight what you'll see is we're going to start with adding the onions to the pan first. And the order that I'm going to go is I'm going to cook the onions first, and then I'm going to add the olives and the capers together after the onions have cooked a bit, and continue to cook them. And because the garlic will cook really fast and you don't want to burn your garlic, I add the garlic in pretty late, and I have my tomatoes all chopped up and ready because all the juice from the tomatoes will slow the cooking down. So I'll add the garlic in, the garlic will start to brown a little bit, and before the garlic can brown too much or burn, I'll add my tomatoes in. That will slow the whole thing down. So let's get the onions cooking, and then while those are going, we'll get everything else together. Okay, here we are at the stove. So for a change, I'm not going to cook in cast iron tonight. So the pasta sauce is perfectly good in a stainless kind of a saute pan. I wanted to show you this. So, I talk about like medium or medium high, and you basically just do it based off of the calibration of the way that your stove is. But that's a fairly low to medium kind of a flame. And I'm going to start getting the pan hot like we typically do. And then first thing is the olive oil. So, when you're making pasta sauce, you want a good amount of olive oil, because that's what you're cooking everything in, and it's also, you know, a delicious part of the sauce. So we let the olive oil get kind of warmed up, and then we're going to add the onions. Alrighty, here we go. So again, you know, it really, it is a lot about timing, and so I'm going to show you over the next few, you've probably seen in some of the other videos, and I'm going to show you in a couple of specific videos what the French call mise en place, and that means getting everything set up in its place and prepared so you're ready to go. And what that lets you do is make sure that your timing is good. So you can think through the dish that you're making. You can make sure that you have all your ingredients. You prepare them properly, and then you're ready to cook. And then you don't miss anything, and your timing can work out perfectly. So here you see that I've got the onions going, and so while the onions are going, and I've got a couple of my other things already ready to go. I've got my black olives that are right here. Those are going to be next going in. And I've also got capers. So these are capers that are in liquid. You see that they come in a little bottle. It costs about $3 or so. It's 3.5 ounces. So, you know, I'm going to use most of this tonight. We like capers a lot. There are a few different kinds of capers. You'll see these are the larger ones. They also make the teeny ones. I prefer the larger ones, and I actually prefer buying them packed in salt. And you can't find those usually in most grocery stores. You need to go to an Italian specialty store to get the capers packed in salt. They keep for ages. They're dried out. They're packed in the salt, and you need to rinse them off. You got to pull them out of the salt and rinse them off in hot water. And I usually let them soak in hot water and then squeeze them. These I just strain out of here and I squeeze them, and then sometimes I'll rinse them as well, depending on what the kind of brine is in the packaging. So I've got my olives, and I'm going to get my capers ready while my onions are cooking, and then we'll get back over here and get our other ingredients going too. Okay, so now the onions are cooking, so I'm going to get the tomatoes ready, and you know it's not exactly tomato season right now. And so for cooking a sauce like this in not the summer time, you gotta, if you want to do it, you gotta find some tomatoes that are going to be good. So you can either use canned tomatoes. You can buy a good can of peeled Italian plum tomatoes, like we put in the beef the other day. Same kind of thing, and you do it the same way. You put them in a bowl and squeeze them and take the basil leaf out and so forth, and so then you can use those. Those are good. Or you can use the kumatos. I've been buying those. Those are pretty good. Those are they're greenhouse grown, and they are tastier than most store-bought tomatoes. And these little ones are made and grown by the same company, and they're pretty good. And what I find is that the cherry tomatoes in the off season, if you want fresh tomatoes, are your best bet. They will have the best flavor for sure. And in the even the ones you'll see in the grocery store, the ones that the regular tomatoes that come, they're grown and they come on the little vine. And even those really don't taste all that great, to be honest. So I'm just quartering or cutting up these tomatoes, and again, like I mentioned, the onions are cooking. Alrighty, so I've got my onions. These were getting a little bit brown because I was chatty and talking too much, but they look pretty good. So they'll be tasty. You just don't want them to get burned. I'm going to add my olives. So these are pitted little Niçoise olives. Here are my capers. I am going to use the whole jar of capers. So there we go. Capers are in. So these olives are much more mild in flavor than a lot of different kinds of olives. Let me move you a little closer here. So typically what I use in pasta sauces, or often what I use in pasta sauces, are Kalamata olives, and those are grown mostly in Greece and some in Italy and some in North Africa, but you know, the real Kalamatas are from Greece, and you can get those in most stores these days. Sometimes you'll see them in jars like the capers, but others, most often you'll see them in kind of an olive bar where they'll have a big selection of olives, and either they come with the pits in them, or sometimes they sell them already pitted, which is nice. And when you get them, you buy them by weight, and if you're going to use them right away, use the slotted spoon and don't get any of the brine juice, so you're not paying for the brine juice by the pound. If you're going to keep them for a while, then you need to have some of that, and just keep them in your refrigerator, and they'll keep for a good long time in your refrigerator. Okay, so these guys are going nicely, and now I'm going to add my garlic. Okay, so this goes pretty quick. So I get my garlic in there, and I don't want to burn the garlic, right? So I've got a bunch of my tomatoes ready. I may do a few more tomatoes, but I've got a bunch of my tomatoes ready that I can add in here really quickly, that will really slow the cooking down. Okay? And in the meantime, I've got my pot of water over here. So don't underdo it on your pot of water. So if you're cooking for 2 people, you still need a pretty big pot of water. And you always use salted water for cooking the pasta, and we can talk about that. But get your big pot of water on there and get that going while your sauce is going. Now the great thing about a lot of these pasta sauces too is that you can make them and then hold them, you know. So you could make your pasta sauce in the afternoon and have it ready to go, and then at the last minute, if you had a friend over or something, cook your pasta, and you're good to go. Okay, so now I'm going to add some of my tomatoes and get this going with the tomatoes. And while that's cooking, I'm going to quickly get the rest of my tomatoes chopped up. Okay, so now we want to get our other ingredients together. So I'm going to use some basil. And the basil, you just pick it off the stems like that. And I put a good amount in there, you know. Basil that you clip from your basil plant is the ultimate that you guys are pretty used to. This organic basil I've been buying it's surprisingly delicious. Watch for the basil will start to kind of turn black like that. And so a leaf like that, I'll pull the top off like that. It's not the best looking leaf in the world, so I'm not going to use the whole thing. I'll use that. That's okay. And this one I'll let go. So that one doesn't look all that great to me. And we tend to like basil a lot, so we put a decent amount in there. That's probably enough right there, right? The other thing is, if you do buy a packet of basil like this, and you see that there's a black leaf or two in it, pull the black leaves off, because once they start to go bad, then they'll kind of get to the others and make the whole thing go kind of off. Okay, so while our water's boiling, I'm just going to pull the sauce off the stove a little bit here and get the water really boiling. And I wait to cut the basil up until the very last second. So I'm going to get my Parmesan ready. We talked about Reggiano Parmesan the other day. I wouldn't buy anything other than that. It's kind of pointless. You know, you don't need a ton, but that's actually what's going to make your dish. So that's it on our ingredients for tonight. We've got the sauce going. We've got our basil that's just about ready to go. I'll cut this up so you can see that. And then I've got crushed red pepper flakes that I'm going to add in at the end. And tonight we're going to cook angel hair pasta, but you could use really anything. You can use, you could put this with penne, you could put this with ravioli. So you see I just kind of bunch this up, and then you don't have to chop it too much. You just kind of, almost like little slices, right? And again, your fingers are vertical and they're kind of guiding your way down. And that's it. You could use gluten-free vegan ravioli. You can definitely use the gluten-free eggless pasta in any kind of sauce like this with no problem at all. I mean, it cooks exactly the same way, and you know, you do exactly the same thing. Okay, so we're going to get back over here to the stove in a moment. Okay, so here we are. You see that the water is really boiling. It's a rolling boil. That's what you want. You salt your water with kosher salt. About, well, if you have a gallon of water, you want to put about 1/3 of a cup. So I'm going to put a little palm full of water. You want the water to be pretty salty, to be honest with you. I also have not seasoned the pasta sauce. With this sauce, you need to be a little bit careful because olives and capers are both salty, so you got to watch out for that a little bit. But you do want to season it a little bit, and always start a little light and then add a little bit more, you know, if you need it. So you'll see in this sauce. Well, let me get the pasta in the water first. So, like I mentioned, we're going to have angel hair pasta. This is a dried angel hair. This is a just Barilla that tends to be pretty good, that you can find pretty much anywhere. And then you go. Now, what you have to watch out for is that your pot is full of water and it's boiling, and now you just added a whole bunch of pasta. And so what's going to happen is it's going to boil over. So you need to watch it. You want to make sure that after you add your pasta, you bring it back to a boil, but then you're probably going to want to turn your stove down so it doesn't boil water all over the place and get starchy pasta water all over the place. So using tongs or using a fork, just kind of stir it around so it doesn't get stuck together. You want to try to separate it as much as you can. And the boiling water will obviously cook it, but at the same time it's going to keep it moving around and will keep it from sticking together. So I'm going to let that get boiling a little bit more, and then I'm going to turn it down a little bit so it doesn't boil over. We'll keep it boiling, but not boiling over. Okay. So back to the sauce here. So as you see that it's not the sauciest sauce. It's not really wet, right? It's not too juicy. And with something like angel hair will absorb a lot of the liquid. And if you don't have enough liquid, it's just going to sort of get clumped together. And so what we'll do is when we strain the pasta, we'll keep a bit of the water from cooking the pasta and add it in with the sauce here. And in fact, you know, I may do that right now. Actually, just add a little bit of this anyway. A couple spoonfuls will make it easier when we start adding our pasta to the sauce. So I don't even have the flame on under the sauce right now. It's just sitting there nicely. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to show you is I wanted to add some crushed red pepper. So these are chili flakes, and you can get these in most You can get them in all spice markets, and you can get them in most grocery stores. I like crushed red pepper a lot. So we're going to add a couple pinches of this because we like it a little bit spicy. If you don't like it spicy, don't add any. So we'll add that. And while the pasta's cooking, I'm going to taste this and see how we're doing on the seasoning. This is also really good on bread. That's great. So I don't think it needs more salt. And the pepper is going to kind of settle in and develop a little bit. So I'm going to let that sit as it is for right now and see how we do with that. And in the meantime, our pasta's cooking. Now this angel hair cooks fast. It's probably 5 minutes at the most and it's done. And the best way you can tell if it's done is just to take a piece out and eat it. And you know when it's done. You can tell if there's a bit in the middle that's still a little bit too hard. You don't want it overcooked, so you want it nice and firm. But that goes pretty quick. Ravioli obviously is going to take longer. Spaghetti, of course, anything that is thicker is going to take longer. But so that's why you get your sauce pretty well ready to go. And I've got my plates out here. I've got my strainer out here. I've got my cheese and my basil ready to go. So I'm completely ready. So when this is cooked, I've got everything and I can get it on the plate, and our dinner is served hot and is delicious. Okay, so I think we're about done here. This looks like it's ready. Yep. Okay, so I'm going to strain it, and I'll show you. I'm going to keep a little bit of the water. So here we are in the strainer, and I'm not going to strain it the entire way. I'm going to let it be dripping a little bit, and I've got a little bit of extra water on the side in case we need it. There we go. Okay, look at that. So I just mix it up so you're getting some sauce onto the pasta nicely. And now we're going to add the Parmesan cheese. Then I'm going to save some. And if you don't eat dairy, then don't add the cheese. Right? And I'm going to add the basil. And I'm going to save a little bit of that as well. And I'm actually going to use tongs now because I'm going to use tongs to plate it. And it makes it a little bit easier to make sure that I'm getting sauce on all of the pasta here. Now, I mentioned that the angel hair will really absorb liquid, and what the flip side to that is that the Parmesan cheese will kind of hold it together a little bit. So the Parmesan and the sauciness sort of offset each other a little bit. The Parmesan will kind of thicken it up a little. Okay, so there it is. I'm going to move you over here so we can plate it together. Okay. Here we go. You don't want too much. Nice portion. Are. A little bit of Parmesan cheese on the top. A little bit of basil. Little basil leaf. Take your towel or your paper towel. Clean the edge off a little bit. And there you have it. There's your pasta. Ready to go. All right, enjoy that one.